3, 2, 1, go. All right, y'all, what's going on? GoofyRhexxi here. Hope everybody is doing well. Got quite a bit to talk about. There's some data mines that went out yesterday that showed us the traits that we're going to need for the next upcoming War Scourge event, which at some point in time, I guess is going to be within the next week or two, or at some point in time there. And then we got this a little bit earlier today that's listed out all of the nodes and the characters and waves that we're going to be facing here in these War Scourge nodes. So we're going to kind of go through this quickly, and we're going to talk about some team comps that could potentially work here, and some of the nuances, I guess, of these nodes that you're going to want to think about if you're going to be going through this here. And I say we because I'm here with Athame, who's you're pretty heavy duty on Scourges, right?
Scourge, Cosmic Crucible, and the like. I'm pretty well familiar with it.
Yeah, I know that you kind of put a lot of work into it. I know your Pestilence Scourge run was kind of Hall of Fame-ish, if we put it that way, based on kind of where you are in the game, right? You did really well there, put a lot of theory crafting into it. So we're going to be going through some stuff here, but what's like your initial thoughts, man, on some of these nodes and some of the waves in these nodes? Like, we were talking about it before we started the video. Like, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, you're going to have to really manage some of your repeat appearance characters, like some of your Young Avengers. You're going to figure out just how much you hate Heroes, Guardians, and Ghost Rider. You're going to hate Ghost Rider all over again. Like, Doom Raids don't do that enough for you.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about Node 5 and Node 10, and like just how much like both of these nodes are essentially very anti-hero Asgardians. So just prepare yourself in advance, everyone, that Hero Asgardians probably are your best option, but at the same time, it's very anti those characters. But where do you want to start? You want to start out talking about the bio nodes here, because that's going to be your first two nodes of the section, right?
Yeah, I think just going in order makes the most sense.
Yeah, so for your first two nodes, we'll start off with node 1. So you're going to be looking at, these are going to be your bio nodes here. This is going to be Kitty Pryde, you got Phyla-Vell, Jessica Jones, Nico, Spider-Woman, Sunfire, Phantom X on node 1. And then for that second wave, you're going to have Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, Echo, and Bishop. And I think we talked about this really quickly, like some of the team comps that you probably could use here, we listed out. So we have like Black Bolt with like Yo-Yo, and these three Young Avengers characters here, and then this one right here with Spidey and Ghost. And we kind of made we kind of agreed on this, that Web Warriors themselves are probably just not going to be very good for this, right?
Well, right, and you also have to take into account Sunfire's unavoidable ult, and then his special and ult on his second turn will just delete Web Warriors.
Yeah, for sure. And then you kind of came up with this comp right here. Can you kind of talk about a little bit about what are your thoughts here? And of course, this team, as you can see, my Hulk is not built up, my She-Hulk is not built up here. But can you kind of talk about like what were your thoughts with like JJ using She-Hulk with like Squirrel Girl, Miss Marvel, and Hulk here?
So She-Hulk and JJ are going to be here mostly to support the rest of the team. JJ with her energy, and She-Hulk certainly with her stun and passive with Hulk.
Yeah.
The two Young Avengers and Hulk are going to be your big three here.
Okay.
And the main theory is how often can you bounce certain members above and below half health, namely Squirrel Girl and Hulk. Because if you can do that a lot, you can get a lot of turn meter going between those two.
Okay.
And just let Hulk take a bunch of turns and do all the heavy lifting and damage.
Okay. All right, and then so you're basically saying, like, for the most part, if you haven't really invested, I think we agreed to that, like, Gamma is probably, the Gamma team in general is probably the best team for this, but unfortunately, if you're kind of like myself, where I haven't unlocked Abomination and I haven't unlocked Brawn, it's probably not going to be the best option for most people, but you're saying that this is kind of a way to sort of bridge the gap a little bit, right, if you don't have a full Gamma team?
Right, and certainly if you are doing what you should be and participating in Marvel Horde Force the correct way, build up Red Hulk, and on just a quick, fast, whatever run, come back in and use Red Hulk here, because Red Hulk will help a lot.
Yeah, that's actually really key what you said. So one of the things that I've heard some people talk about is, okay, like go through like a quick run, get unlock Red Hulk, build him up, and then come back in and just use your full Gamma team, right, for the first 2 nodes.
Yeah, and or a hybrid if you don't have Abomination run yet.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, what are your thoughts here on these other 2 comps? Like, you think that these will still work too, though, right? Like the Black Bolt with Yo-Yo and Ghost Spider and Spidey. Like, how do you think that this will work out with, especially looking at some of these waves here for Node 1 and then, of course, like Node 2, which we'll get to in a second. Like, how do you think that these will kind of work and balance between the 2 nodes with these particular comps? I said particular comps in these nodes multiple times, but yeah, you get a point.
Yeah, I'm a lot more confident in the Yo-Yo and Black Bolt with the 3 Young Avengers setup than I am with Web Warriors. Because with Web Warriors, you have Sunfire on that first wave of Node 1, and you have on that second node Shang-Chi and Kestrel and Black Bolt. You just have a lot of unavoidable damage coming in, where no matter how hard you pray to the dodge gods, you're going to get obliterated.
Right. Yeah, and then for Node 2, which we didn't talk about here, was like you have the first wave with GR, there's Shang-Chi, there's Sharon. The second wave here is with Kestrel, Maria, Black Bolt, and the third wave is with Thanos and Crystal here. So kind of like, what's the strategy here on Node 2 a little bit? Because this is going to be a more challenging node than Node 1. Like, what's your strategy on Node 2 you're thinking?
So the ideal situation for Node 2 is that you come in with a full Gamma, but if you can't do that, Hulk, She-Hulk, Red Hulk, and then Skrull Girl and Miss Marvel would probably be your best bet.
Okay.
Because you're going to want some of that turn control coming out of Red Hulk, and you are pretty much free to use his ult whenever, just to really lay out damage over the field.
Yeah.
And you're definitely going to want to take out Shang-Chi before he can kind of lay down the hurt.
Yeah.
If you don't have those options available to you, I am pretty confident that Black Bolt and Yo-Yo, if you built them up previously, can help you a lot with the offense downs in terms of managing some of the damage coming out of these tunes.
Okay. And for sure, like, you definitely want to get Shang-Chi, probably Sharon, and Ghost Rider. Well, Ghost Rider probably first, right? Because you definitely just don't want to keep on getting pinged while you're trying to kill Shang and try to kill Sharon. But like, some of these characters, you want to get out of the way completely before Kestrel and Maria drop down, right?
Absolutely. I'd probably say Shang-Chi has to go first, because otherwise he's going to do his special on the second turn, and you just won't ever... He's going to heal too much.
Yeah.
Way too much.
All right. So Node 1 and Node 2, we kind of figured out a little bit here. Now, Node 3 and Node 4, that's where we were talking about your best bet really is it's Young Avengers and Bionic Avengers. But you were saying that Bionic Avengers are probably your main team here, with Young Avengers kind of being a cleanup.
Yeah, and the best thing about Bionic here is that you'll have that early access to Vivolt to kind of stop Dagger and the Hero as Guardians from doing a lot of their early damage, and being able to flip like the blind from Magneto. The only thing you'll have to watch is that you take out that first Thor and probably Valkyrie before that Heimdall drops, because they won't have that blind immunity until Heimdall hits the field, but once he does, it'll stay there.
Gotcha.
So you kind of have to get control of the node and get in a good flow before they drop. And of course, the good thing with Bionic is you don't have to worry about Cloak's dodging mechanics at all.
Yeah.
So some of that RNG is kind of taken out of the situation.
Okay. Now, there could be some challenges here because, of course, there is Valkyrie. And, I mean, of course, right? Like, there is a 50% chance. But if you're killing Thor, then they could get that immunity with, like, Jane and Valkyrie. Ideally, that's the reason why you want to take out Thor before Heimdall and the other Thor falls. But I think you're saying kind of like main priority, though, is just getting rid of Dagger so that Cloak doesn't drop down as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
You can do pretty well with some of the AoE in the team, trying to take out 2 or even 3 of the Asgardians at once.
Okay, I got you. All right, and then for Node 4, this is what you said is probably going to be between this and Node 10, which we'll talk about later. is most likely the most challenging nodes, because in node 4 you're looking at Amidas Cho, which is Brawn, She-Hulk, there's Morbius, Abomination, Human Torch, Deathpool. The second wave has Doc Ock, Scream, Electro, and Hulk, and then of course a third wave there's another Hulk that falls down. You're saying that this is probably one of the most challenging nodes in the entire Scourge event, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to have to do with, we've already seen the power and potential behind the Gamma team.
Yeah.
So if you aren't able to take down probably Brawn and either She-Hulk or Abomination before that next Hulk drops, you're going to run into so many issues, because they are just they sustain themselves incredibly well, and they are a very dynamic unit once they get going in terms of left punch, right punch, left punch, right punch with that team, and they just will beat you down.
Right, for sure. So Cho is probably like primary target number 1, right? Because he's the biggest one where if you're trying to take out She-Hulk or Abomination, once they get below 50%, he's like filling their speed bar. He's giving them the offense. That's when they become really dangerous, right?
Yeah, especially with how much the team puts defense down out, is that you can run into that combination pretty often if you aren't careful.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be target Brawn, target She-Hulk, so that the debuffs stop coming back at you, so that you can actually control the field.
Yeah. And you got to be careful. There's a potential chance that you may have to go in and restart this node too, right? Because node 4 with Abomination, he's going to stun a character right out of the gate. So you may have, if he stuns the wrong one, you're probably going to have to restart, right?
Yeah, like if your Viv gets stunned.
Yeah. It's
restart
100%.
It's over. Restart.
For sure. And then after that, it's like, okay, you're probably not going to get through all of it with Bionic Avengers, but then you can bring in your Young Avengers and kind of clean it up and kind of move on from there. And then we kind of get to node 5, where this one is one where you were kind of sharing some different thoughts and ideas here. So node 5 is tough because you got Phantom X, there's Omega Red, there's Psylocke, Negasonic, you got Doctor Strange, Heartless, and Wong, Silver Samurai. This is the first wave. Omega Red is the scariest out of all of them. But then the second wave, there's Maddie and Mr. Sinister, Dazzler. And in third wave, you got Negasonic and Phantom X. So you definitely want to avoid these two Phantom X's being here, because once he drops again, he's going to give them back evade if you keep Dazzler and you keep Phantom X. But public enemy number 1 is Omega Red. Now, talk to me about like some of the team comps that you were thinking of for node 5.
So, given that the only character that actually brings blind into the situation here is going to be Dazzler in that second wave, there's a solid argument to drop Heimdall for Star-Lord T'Challa on this node.
Yeah.
Because you need a character that's going to go faster than Omega Red. You're going to need to get that blind off on him pretty early and steal some of that ability energy.
Yeah.
So that he isn't doing that special ult back-to-back and just burying your team under heal block and all the trauma and damage that he puts out.
Right. And then we flirted with this idea a little bit here too, that on your node 4, where you're trying to clean up that node with Young Avengers, that it might not be a terrible idea to bring in Thor as a part of that 4-person team, just so that you can kind of build up his ult to be ready for node 5, right? Because the ideal scenario here is what you're talking about with using T'Challa to blind Omega Red, stealing the ability energy, and then hoping, right, that you can then use that stun to stun Doctor Strange, Heartless, or Psylocke, just to make sure that that Psylocke doesn't put it back on you, or that Doctor Strange doesn't do too much damage or something like that, right?
Pretty much. You're going to want to at least stun Heartless, probably Wong, and certainly Psylocke. Bonus points if you hit Omega Red.
Yeah, for sure. But of course, and after that, like the primary goal is to then take out Omega Red and try to focus down taking out Heartless and then Wong after that.
Yeah, because you don't want Heartless to get to his ultimate, because all that damage coming through, you will probably lose too many members too quickly.
Yeah. And then we talked about this as well, like Heimdall, although you're talking about taking him out in node 5, he's still a pretty important character that you're going to need for like node 10 though, right?
Yeah, Heimdall is not a character you are going to have the ability to bench. You're going to have the full team.
Okay. And we'll talk about the reason why once we get to node 10 there. So, and then node 6 and node 7, this is where you're going to need your villain characters, right? This is where you're going to need to kind of go in, and you're going to need to, well, villain is actually, do we even talk about villains? Because for the most part, right, it's like Morgan Le Fay and company. That's what you need.
Morgan, Darkhold, Omega Red, Doom, Weapon X. Must we say more?
Emma, Zemo, if you really like it, if you really want to go in for a node. Yeah, Black Order is not terrible for probably like node for a node or two, or a cleanup or a sack, whatever. Node 7, I think a lot of players were when initial feedback was like, oh man, Cersei and Icarus, and we were like, but Agatha.
And they're 2 waves apart. Like,
exactly.
If you are letting them drop onto the same wave, we have I have problem. 2 very specific terms. The first is going to be user error, and the second phrase would be, it is at that point that you know you fucked up. Yeah. And you restart and you kill Cersei.
Yeah, definitely. For you gotta, like, for sure, you should not let Cersei, and if Icarus is all the way in the 3rd wave, the last character to drop down, you should definitely be able to control that enough to where you don't have to worry about it. And of course, if you have Morgan there, Black Widow is rendered useless. You're really kind of in a position where you should be able to control that. As long as you have Morgan and the other Darkhold characters, you're pretty good. So the really only other portion that you have to worry about here is like node 8 and node 9, right? Like that's really kind of where it gets, you got to think about it a little bit, but it's still not as challenging as what the first nodes were before, right?
Yeah, like 8 and 9 are not going to be the monsters that 1 through 5 are.
Yeah. And this is your skill section, if I didn't say that before. Yeah. And by the way, I think I didn't say this earlier, 3 and 4 are Avengers. I forgot to mention that. So nodes 8 and 9, this is going to be your skill section, which also will feature some Avenger characters.
Right. So obviously the main team here is going to be your 3-piece Secret Avengers, and other notable characters being Shang-Chi, Castrol, and you can bring in a few other characters here and there if you have them built up on your roster, you know, thinking Zemo and Taskmaster and I'm blanking on her name, Gamora and Moondragon.
Yep.
Those 2 are also part of skill. You know, you have Okoye and Proxima and Corvus. So you have a couple other options that you can scramble together for the skill section to work your way through it if you have to. I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad or as rough as any of the prior nodes, just because everyone's going to have their Secret Avengers super built up.
Yeah.
If you're doing Doom raids. Shang-Chi is a cheat code. He is still one of the best characters in the game.
Yeah, so much damage.
Yeah, he might not stand up to Horseman, but he's still a phenomenal damage dealer.
Yeah.
And, of course, you know, who the fuck is Castrol?
Yeah. Yeah, but she's going to be pretty important, right? To node 8, node 9, especially node 8, where we're probably looking at, there's a Drax here. So we're probably going to want to ult Drax, get that taunt off so that you can focus down on Dagger again for node 8.
Yeah, let Shang-Chi ult Dagger and just, you know, damage.
Right.
He'll just start deleting people once he targets someone with any buffs at all.
Yep. And then we have node 9, which the only thing to really be concerned about here in node 9 is kind of that Colleen Wing. You don't, and then the second wave with Magneto could be a little challenging too, so to pay attention to that. But node 9, like on turn 1, like first wave, I should say, you're definitely going to want to take out this Colleen Wing because her bleeds and that heal block could definitely be sort of damaging.
Yeah, particularly in terms of just the other remaining damage coming out of that. You know, the out of turn damage from Echo and Bishop and Phantom X and Black Bolt just kind of all add up if you aren't careful. Yeah,
for sure. All right, and then we get to the last node, which is the worst of them all, which is node 10. This is where you're going to need to go back to your Hero as Guardians, your Ravagers or your what is it, your wave one Avengers, right? So this right here just reminds me of Dark Dimension 3 Global. There's Vision, Hulkbuster, Iron Man, War Machine, Rescue, Ironheart, Deathlock on the second wave, Vision, Bishop, Jubilee, which is just like, what? And then the third wave, just to add salt to the wound, let's add another Hulkbuster. Like, what the hell is this node right now? What the hell is this node 10?
This node 10, you run a high difficulty, high scourges, and you make node 9 your last node.
Yeah, I think that's what we both agreed on, right? Like, listen, you do a high difficulty run, get through node 9, get your 1.4, your 1.5, 1.7, whatever, and then you just say, you know what, node 10, we're just gonna skip that because that makes zero sense. It's what makes it bad is that there's so many other comps that could probably get through this, but you gave us Hero Asgardians to try to do this. How, why? This seems impossible. It really does. And is there a way that you could probably kind of try to like theory craft to get through node 10 with Hero Asgardians? Would you have to like build out Ravagers just to be able to even do this?
So certainly to some extent, the biggest concern is, and once again, Star-Lord T'Challa making a notable appearance here, is that there is some potential that you could come in here with, like, maybe you drop Sif and you come in here and you try to steal energy from Viv and stop her from popping off. You know, you stun Hulkbuster or whoever to stop her from getting energy from the rest of the team. Focused on Rescue to prevent the cleanse. You try to work your way through it that way. The biggest concern is you'd have to have all of Valkyrie's cooldowns back up from node 5.
Oh.
She has some notably long cooldowns.
Yeah. And Thor's, right?
Yeah, and Thor. And it is just, you know, Bishop and Jubilee is going to punish you for having to use that Valkyrie passive if you do.
Yep.
And you are just going to be having to struggle every inch of the way through this node because all of these characters are going to have a lot of interlocked mechanics.
Yeah. It's almost as if, though, you have to have all three teams available just to be able to get through node 10.
I mean, the problem with that is, you know, who's building Wave 1 right now?
No one should.
Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor.
Right, exactly. No one should build them. And then Ravagers, like, I mean, I guess high-end tier wars, sure, those players might have built up their Ravager team, but it's a hard sell to 80% of the community, right? To say build up your Wave 1 Avengers and build up your Ravagers, which is the reason why we're going to go back to, hey, prior to this, build up just get through difficulty 9, equip your Scourges there, do a high run, and then maybe you just skip node 10 and just say screw that.
And that might just be what has to happen because you're going to be constantly contending with some of the high-end struggles.
Yeah.
To get through that node. Just because there's so much damage potential there.
Yeah, for sure.
And the control coming out of a lot of that Bionic team is not minor.
Yeah, it's not. No, absolutely not. All right, so that's pretty much it in terms of the nodes here. There's probably going to be some more theory crafting and figuring out some stuff as we kind of start to go through it. I think bottom line that we're set here is a maybe initial run. You kind of just run through it. You get your Red Hulk. You build him up. You bring in that full Gamma team or that hybrid Gamma team for node 1 and then node 2. For node 3 and 4, where you're going to need your Avengers, you use your Bionic Avenger team. For node 3, you bring him into node 4, and then clean up with Young Avengers with Thor so that you can build up Thor's ult. You go into node 5. Try to take out Omega Red, use T'Challa there on Omega Red. You try to get the stun going with Thor for Psylocke, Strange Heartless, Wong if you can. Psylocke less so, but mainly Strange Heartless, Wong, and Omega Red as a bonus. Villain seems to be fairly easy. Node 8 with skills seems to be fairly easy. And then, like I said, we may want to just go with high run here on difficulty 9, and then maybe just skipping node 10 just in its entirety, man. But Yeah, Athame. I mean, I appreciate it, man. I always appreciate your insights here. Thank you for helping to kind of walk through this. And any final thoughts that you have?
I think it's kind of dirty how they set up 5 and 10 in particular. I think that part of it could have to do with their own blunder with the Summer of Blunder. And knowing that people are going to have more shards in the newer characters like Jane because of how they effed up her event. And with Valkyrie being an event campaign. So, if that's certainly what happened, shame on them for having to feel the need to go back and make content more impossible just because they made mistakes.
Right. And I definitely agree with that. I think both me and you kind of are thinking the same thing. I also think too that they thought Famine was a little bit too easy. So that's also the reason why they're making this harder too. So on both fronts, Mighty Thor blunder and this one is probably the reason why they're why Node 5 and Node 10 are just seem incredibly impossible right now. But listen, appreciate you being here, Athame. Thank you guys for watching. I want to know what your thoughts are too in regards to these nodes, like what you're probably going to be building out and trying to use here. It's obviously we're not there yet, but we're definitely getting very close. I think now for me personally, I'm kind of just stopping all investment on anything else that's not Scourge, just to make sure. And I'm not even necessarily investing in for Scourge as of yet, other than probably bringing up some characters like Heimdall and Sif, because I now realize I'm going to need them at level 85 in order to be able to get through this. But listen, appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. And until next time, guys, y'all be blessed. Y'all be safe.
Have a good one, y'all.